and not really leaning into the connection. And I guess for us, how much as change agents are we also spending our time and energy and emotional resources by not joining with others as quickly as we need to? So for us, there's been a couple of, we've been having just some small groups, we're not. So when we're thinking about being in the judging mode, we're really sizing up the person. Are you bigger than me or smaller than me? You know, where do you fit? Where are you in the hierarchy? When I understand that I'm really joining, I'm leaning in to connect. We assume we're going to connect. Very different kind of connection and understanding if I assume I'm going to connect with you versus I'm feeling like I'm not sure, who is this person? I'm cautious, some of you talked about that, versus I'm really open. And I put the person in a box. Okay, what box are they in? How can I define them? And who are they? And what's the boundary? Versus I'm really assuming we're going to connect. And then I think there's one of the ways we make others small. You know, somebody said, well, if I feel judged, how dare you? I'm going to judge you. And we get into a whole spiral that really assumes that judging mode. Versus I see others as big, and what can I learn? One of the things that Gail Jamieson, who started our firm, always talked about is really seeing and finding other people who are big so she could learn from them. And her notion, and she wrote a book called The Middle Theory, and one of the things in her book she talked about is if I have a candle and you have a candle, and you light my candle, it doesn't take anything away from me, it gives us more light. But do we really hold that assumption? Do we really hold that if you have something and I have something, we have more together versus less? One of the things that we've been destroying this notion about judging is when I'm really judging, I'm focusing on the person. I'm focusing on the things that are wrong with them. I'm focusing on them in terms of what they didn't do right. When I'm really joining, I'm focusing on the task. What are we here to do? And how can we together do better? And lastly, I think when we come out of that judging mode, we're really in that critical place. Now, again, we're not losing our assessment. We're not losing the ability to assess something as being, because our clients let us spin on this one. You know, well, we need judgment. It's really important. We're not getting rid of judgment. We need judgment. But I shouldn't be judging you. I should be connecting with you. Now, if there's problems, we need to address it. If there are issues, but I can do it in a joining way, as opposed to doing it in a judging way. And I think for us, this has been a foundational way of really shifting, transforming, as Fred said, the interactions within an organization. We have people actually assessing themselves. I'm joining right now, I'm judging right now. They're really catching themselves in terms of what's going on with me in this moment to really see if I'm really about joining. This is very hard. And Fred's thing is, let's try as an experiment. You know, we may not all be able to do that, but let's start with the notion of joining. Now, sometimes I'm going to be wrong, and sometimes people can't move themselves. And so maybe I'm going to get back that skepticism and that negativity. But you know, and maybe sometimes I'm wrong, but most of the time, I think people are going to join quicker, and that's what we're seeing. We're going to connect faster. We're going to be able to change things more quickly as well. So we invite you to join with us and play with this, experiment with this, see what happens to you.
I feel like this is a fundamental change. I keep thinking that there's something foundational in the way we interact with human beings that's got to be different. And I think this is one of them. I'm not saying it's the whole thing, but I think it's one of the legs of that stool. And I think that judging is what starts us down a spiral, downward spiral often. It's you judge me, I judge you, we're going to take this. And again, how that works in communities and the globe, I don't know. But we have the clock right here. How that works in a community, I don't know, or globally, but inside of organizations, it can make a big difference, add tremendous amount of value. And so we see people in organizations, as you said, saying, am I judging or joining? And one of our clients says, I'm a judge, I like judging, I like to judge everyone. So somebody told me a long time ago that any of the patterns of behavior that we have, we might not be able to, or we can't eliminate them, but we can speed them up. And so my comment to him is to judge faster. And he was joining. Half the time you're always judge anyhow, so doesn't make any difference. You judge faster and get to the other side. But the waste that happens through the judging process, the waste that happens through people sizing people up, and therefore the person holds back. If I feel judged, I'm holding back. And all the other things that you said, how do we break that cycle? So I've just been going and joining. I've just been leading with joining and being joining. I'm like, I'm gonna make some mistakes, but guess what? I did a lot of mistakes in the judging world. So here's a way to experiment, and I think it makes a difference. And I've experienced it as a difference, and I experienced other people seeing it that way. As far as I know, we have 34 minutes because I lobbied back for all the introductory time. I was talking to the conveners. Partnering with clients, rules for the river. Eileen Fisher has been a client of ours for about 10 years. And that's been a wonderful, she's been a woman clothing designer, wonderful experience, wonderful woman buyer clothes, yay. And she talks about change in her company as a river. And she talks about a process of being in the river and being with the flow of the river. And there are times when you need to go to the bank of the river and come out of the river to relax, to reflect, to do whatever you need to do, meet with others. But we're in the flow, and it's a thing. So as we were thinking about what we're learning about clients and the grow self part that we just did, now it's kind of grow ourselves in relationship to organizations. We started thinking about rules for the river. So here's some thoughts that we put together, 7 key lessons that we're experiencing. Respect your client's journey and challenge your client to think bigger. Peter Block, as you know, the person I'm in love with. Don't hold on to things that are sacred. So really respect the client and then challenge the client. We all do that as part of the work, as part of the business. We have to do that and be okay with that. We've been really privileged as an consulting firm where we've always had more work than we could do. And so getting fired by a client's not the worst thing that can happen to us. And so it lets us go to the edge. I feel like if my client is not at least once a year saying, when I do at Fred Miller, that I'm not doing my job. My job is to push them to the edge and push them as far as I can push them. Sometimes I go over the edge and I get my hand slapped and call in for a meeting. But my job is, if I don't go over, then I know I'm not pushing far enough. But I know my job is to push the client and move them as far as I can. Create change through peer-to-peer leadership. A lot of people are writing about this, and we've been talking about it for several years now. It's the mechanism of change in organizations. Top down is dead, you know that. Nobody trusts leadership or even presidential candidates these days. But people do trust their peers. It's the Amazon thing. What do my peer group, or what do others like me think about the book? Not what do the authors say or what does anybody lay on top of that. So peer-to-peer leadership is critical. Create catalysts, critical mass, peers, training peers. So if you talk about interviewing, we shouldn't be at the top and work down the organization. We're interviewing at a peer level. It could be a diagonal slice. But that peer-to-peer change is what people do. I learned this as a peer. I learned this. This is how it's helped me. Why don't you try it? That's what's bringing quick, rapid change in our client systems.
So joining, we already talked about it, but it's really thinking about who do I need to join with? Where can I really link my efforts to others' efforts? And if we think about any kind of change in the organization, we are in silo world, sometimes as OD practitioners. How much is what I'm doing, for example, a silo from what maybe, for example, we've been assisting where McKinsey's in, or another consulting firm. How do we link our efforts together? How do we really join it if we're really here for the good of the organization? So who are those? What are those other efforts? A lot of our work has been connected to Lean Six Sigma these days. To really look at how do we make sure we bring the strength of all we can, all of our brilliance, together to help that organization. So joining has to be really fundamental to that. Number 4, treat leaders as partners and not fragile. The big conversation, I think, for many of us, and I've been around the OD world for a number of years now, 30 or so. The thing about it is sometimes we have kind of a dance that we do with leaders. Because many of the times they're our clients, but we also know that sometimes we're fearful to push on them, to really challenge them in the ways that we need to be challenging them. One of the things that we've done is also recognizing that they don't get feedback very much. And so one of the things we've instituted in our client systems is what we're calling feedback pods. And pods is just thinking about a group of people, kind of peanuts in the pods is kind of how I was thinking about it. A group of people who come together every 4 to 6 weeks and give that leader feedback. People who interact with that leader on an ongoing basis, they see him or her in action. And so what they do is they get an hour, 4 to 6 fundamental, again, growing self, growing team, growing the organization. This is one of the things we encourage you to do. We've also written about practicing social change, which is a UK journal has written it up. But I think there's some ways in which you might think about it. If you're not getting the leaders, not just from you, but from others who are seeing them, how do they really continue to grow? This is one of the things I would say a must do.
Change the system by attacking it in many places, like many fires. Herb Shepard said this first, when he said, Herb Shepard, who said in Rules for Change Agents, one of the 10 rules I think he had was like many fires, which is attack the system in many different places. That these systems are so strong and so powerful, just coming at it in one direction is not going to bring about change. And so we're working with companies that are like, $30 billion, $40 billion companies, and we're trying to change massive organizations. But I think it's true no matter what the size of the organization is. You know how organizations have their own way of maintaining the status quo. And yet our job is to change the status quo. And if we're going to change the status quo, we got to make sure that we're lighting many fires. We're coming at the system in many, many different ways. In our manufacturing client, we're working with the people above site, we're working with the plant manager, we're working with people on the shop floor, we're working across, around, and about the organization, creating catalysts and changes in the system. We're doing as much as we can. And all our clients, the word is time is not on their side. Like I said before, about organizations struggling these days. Nobody has 10 to 15 years. The client that we have now, when we were first talking to him, we've been in this client system for 4 years now, we'll be there for 5. When we first started talking to him, he said, how long is this change going to take, Fred? I said, well, the book said change is going to take 5, 7, 8 years. And he laughed in my face, because I thought I was impolite. But he laughed in my face and said, Fred, I don't have 7 years. I just don't have it. Organizations don't have time. Time is against them. If they're not moving and changing faster than their competitors, they're going to go out of business. We have another client who's their major competitor. They're selling products in retail, and Amazon's coming directly after them. They got to totally change the way they're doing business and totally change their mindsets. If they don't do that quickly, they probably got about 18 months before Amazon eats their lunch. So time is a critical factor that does not exist in organizations. And to the degree that leaders can understand that, then you're able to move pretty quickly and pretty fast with them. Always present many choices versus creating a win-lose with the client.